Hello everyone, welcome to Master's Teach, and we'll discuss about the colonialism in Latin America, Asia and Africa. This is meant for Telangana TET Social and it is completely in English medium. We'll discuss point to point. We're not going into depth, okay? This is a critical class. However, I try to make the simplify the same. If you are newly watching my channel, please do subscribe and share with your friends. Let us start with the lecture. If you are newly watching, please do subscribe. Then we'll hear like the core concept of expansion, how this expansion came. There are two ways. One is imperialism and colonialism. What is imperialism? The idea of one country spreading its power and control over other countries. It is slowly going and spreading its power and control over other countries. That is imperialism. Then colonialism means it is a practical use of land by settling there and using them for money and gain. So why it is happened? Because the industrial revolution happened. So there is a need for mass production, and at the same time, in order to make mass production or finished goods, they need to have strong raw material and large amount of raw material they required. And at the same time, they search for the new energy source, as well as in order to sell their finished products, market is required. That is the reason this imperialism and colonialism happen. Okay, then chronology of global colonization. Okay, it is happen in three ways: 15th to 16th century. That is the Liberian dominance. Spain and Portugal took control over Latin America, and the Treaty of Tordesillas divide the New World. Then 17th 18th century, there is a mercantile or charter company phase where British and Dutch East companies grows in Asia. Then 19th and 20th century, there is a new imperialism. The scramble of Africa happened. So European powers divide the land. So this is the chronology of global colonization. Okay. Then colonialism in Latin America, the conquest. Okay, it is three ways. Then is Argentix, that is Mexico presently. It is destroyed by the Spanish. Then conquistador Hernan Cortes. It is 1519 to 1521. Then Icas, that is Peru nowadays. It is conquered by Francisco Pizarro in 1532. A lot of gold and silver was taken out of this Peru. Then encomenda system. It is a forced labor system, gave Spanish settlers control over the local indigenous people. It helped the large scale taking of silver and gold. So it boosted European economies and caused heavy loss for the native people from Mexico and Peru. So this is the thing. Then Latin America liberalization movement. So who are the people who fought for this liberalization? One is Simón Bolívar. So the liberator, we can call as liberator. He freed the Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador from Spanish rule. So he helped the country saved from the Spanish rule. His name was Simón Bolívar. Sometimes they may ask in TET examination. Then Jose de San Martin. Jose de San Martin. So he led the freedom fight of Argentina and Peru. So he was important leader in the south. Then Haitian Revolution 1804. It was the first successful slave-led revolution. Haiti became the first black republic and gave inspiration for many people around the world. Okay, so then European encroachment in Asia. Okay, this is a power where power includes, just wait, let me have this. Power includes like Britain, Netherlands, France, where they reign or their entroncement, India, Indonesia, China. Then what is the Britain policy in India? So direct or indirect rule. So what happened? The key feature is that annexation through doctrine of lapse and subsidiary alliance. So they have, sometimes they directly rule, sometimes they rule through various local leaders. So that is the annexation through doctrine of lapse and subsidiary alliance. Then Netherlands, okay, where Netherlands region in Indonesia, there is a cultural system that is called culture stelsel. Okay, culture stelsel. Okay, this is a thing. It is a forced growing of export crops, coffee, and indigo sugar. Then France. So the reason is that Indochina. This is assimilation policy. So French language, culture, and legal system were imposed. So for the TET point of view, you have to remember culture stelsel. Okay, CULTURSTELSEL. Okay, this means, so Dutch forced cultivation system in Indonesia. So you have to ask, this the cultivation system in Indonesia, that is called as cultures stelsel. Okay, you have to remember the same. Then Southeast Asian and resistant movements in Philippines, in Burma, and Vietnam. In Philippines, there is a Katupunan revolution. It is an armed fight against Spain, 1896. Then USA led by the Andros Bonifacio. Then Burma. It is a Sayasan rebellion between 1930 to 1932. So it is a peasant revolt against the British colonial taxes and rule. Then Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh. So he led is the nationalist uprising against French colonial rule, founded the Viet Minh 1941. So you have to remember these names. Okay, in Philippine revolution called as Katipunan revolution. In Burma, who led Saya San rebellion. In Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh. Okay, so these are the thing. Okay, they founded in Viet Minh 1941. So let us see the next slide. Here we'll discuss about the scramble for Africa, the partition. Okay, let us see here. There is a direct rule and indirect rule. So the direct rule by France and Belgium, and European administrator imposed, local culture suppressed. It is a direct rule by France and Belgium. Okay, and European administrator were imposed and local culture was suppressed. Whereas indirect rule, so Britain governed through how Britain like rule the colonial through local chiefs and structures. So Berlin Conference, so European power divided Africa without any African consent. There is a 14 nations attended, no African representative was present, where in Berlin Conference 1884 and 85. So the key fact is that Africa went from 10 to 90% for the European control in just 30 years. So direct rule means French, Belgian. So these people use the European officer replace the local rulers. Whereas indirect rule, British, they rule the through local chiefs and old systems. So African resistance movement. So Battle of Adwa. Okay, it is like 1896. Ethiopia won historic victory over Italy. It was only African nation to defeat European colonial power battle. Okay, so this is the Battle of Adwa 1896. Okay, then Asti Wars. It's Ghana. Okay, a series of war against British expansion. The golden stool becomes symbol for Asti freedom. You have it is about the Ghana. So it is against the war against British expansion, and their symbol was Asti. The symbol was golden stool. Okay, then Maji rebellion 1905 to 07. It is a mass uprising in German East Africa. So the rebels believed sacred water, that is Maji, would stop bullets. So here the Battle of Adwa 1896. Then it is a Ethiopian only African nation over colonized. Then global trade network. How this global trade network happen? There is a triangular trade here. The triangular Europe, Africa, America. So the three-way between Europe, America, Africa, and America. So the Europe. So Europe goods made in factories and weapons. Here the goods made and weapons are made in Europe and supplied to manufactured supply to Africa. Then Africa Americans. So Africans enslaved to the enslaved people were sent to America. Then America sent to Europe cash crops and silver gold went there. So this is the post abolition transition. So Assan indenture, Indian and Chinese. Okay, Assan indenture sent, and Golo Ipen bot will discuss after some time. So indenture labor transition. So after slavery ended, Africa and that is including Indian and Chinese were indentured labor, worked on colonial plantation instead of enslaved workers. So when the Africans are not ready, then they use Indians and Chinese to work in the colonial plantations, and they become a slave. Okay, then impact of global economy shifts on India. So what happened through this colonization? Drain of wealthy theory. So Dadabhai Nauroji showed that British colonies took India's wealth to British through trade surplus, salaries and administrative charges. India did not get any real benefit in return. Then deindustrialization. So cheap machine made cloth from England. So destroyed India's old handicraft industries. What does that mean? So due to industrialization, okay, the England has the advantage to make the clothes at cheaper rate by using machinery, whereas Indians used to produce their product through handicraft and handlooms. So that is the reason the demand was very less, and the quality also is not that much good. Then one way trade. India sent raw material out and brought finished goods. So India used to send the raw material, and in return they used to get the finished product. This could be a colonial economic trap. Okay, I hope you understand this. We'll discuss then commercialization of Indian agriculture. So there's a subsistence farming was replaced by commercial cash cropping to meet global colonial market needs. So previously, before the Britishers came to India, our people used to farm food, like they used to cultivate food products. Okay, whereas they're replaced with the indigo. Indigo means it is one type of dye they used to grow. So farmers forced to grow the under the indigo plantation system. This led to the Indigo Revolt 1859. Then opium, it was grown in India and sent to China. It was the important part of Anglo-Chinese triangular trade. Then cotton. So it is supplied to British mill. The shift from food crops so caused agrarian distress and devastating the famine. So here, due to this commercialization of Indian agriculture, so the consequence is that forced cash crops was direct cause of recurring 19th century. Uh, like in India, there is a famine due to growing of the commercial crops. Okay, then transport and infrastructure, the wind factor. So here there is a dual edged infrastructure. So British build the roads, railways and ports for to take the raw material out from India. They are not made for the to develop India. So railways join the mines and farms to the ports for easy export, whereas Vasco da Gama used monsoon winds. So 1498 to reach Goa. So this helped the Portuguese to rule again, whereas wind pattern around the world had long helped the colonial sea routes. So this is the thing: transport, infrastructure, and the wind factor. How it is helped the British people and uh, even for the uh, Portuguese people. Okay, so the cross continental ideology exchanges. So American and French Revolution. So the French Revolution already we discussed in previous lecture. Liberty, equality, and fraternity, or liberty, equality, and rights are inspired uh, early Indian reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai. Then about the Gandhiji. So Gandhi in South Africa, we see here Gandhi's early work in civil disobedience, that is Satyagraha against racial rule, helped and shaped the Indian national movement. So Gandhiji started a National Indian Congress 1894 in South Africa before coming back to India. Okay, when it is happened, it is in 1894. Then the global indentured labor crisis. There is a systematic migration. So after slavery was ended, India and Chinese laborers were taken to indentured contracts to colonial plantation in many parts of the world. So from India and China, so people are taken from this particular. This assume these are the India and China people. So they went to Africa, Mauritius, South Africa, where they used to work mines and farms. When social economic impact, what happened, there is a cultural displacement happened, loss of caste, new hybrid communities came. Then Pacific, like they went to Fiji's like sugarcane field, as well as Caribbean like Trinidad, Guyana, Guyana sugar plantation. So these people are went to this key destination, Caribbean. So Trinidad, Guyana, okay, Guyana, it is in sugar. Africa, Mauritius and South Africa for the mines. Then Pacific, Fiji, sugarcane. So Indian people are used and China's people are used these Caribbean, Africa and Pacifics. So the cause of the growth of this global Indian diaspora brought long-term social and cultural changes. Okay, so there's a comparative moment we'll see here. Indigno, Indigo Revolt. Okay, region India in West Bengal, 1859. So, what is the causes for this revolt? British planters had made farmers to go indigo. Then Santal rebellion. So, in India, in Jharkhand, 1855 to 56. So, land was taken away. So, money lenders also cheated the people. Then, Jepas Zapatista movement. It is in Mexico. The year 1910. Okay, it was for the land sharing and peasant rights under Emiliano Zapata. Then typing rebellion, China. So it is 1850 to 64. Farmers faced trouble, there are inequality and anti-queen feeling. So all four movements, one common root: colonial and feudal and land expansion. So these are the movement. If you want to, you can take the screenshot or just make the note of it, then that will be good enough for you. Okay, so we'll discuss about the post World War I shifts, rise of mass nationalism. Okay, we'll discuss here. There is a post World War I shift, rise of mass nationalism. So there is a collapse of empires. So the fall of Ottoman, Russian and Austro-Hungarian empires. So they fall, they created power gap. So it also gave hope to people many parts of the world. Then Wilson self-determination. So US President Woodrow Wilson, okay, there is a 14 points in 1918 said the people have the right to choose their own government. So this become a big support for Asia and African nationalism. So impact on India. So after the war, so anger and the Rowlatt Act 1919 led to mass nationalist movement under Gandhi. Okay, this is the thing. Then summary of colonial legacy. There is a arbitrary borders. So colonial borders did not match ethnic cultural groups. So this led to post-colonial civil wars in many parts of Africa and Asia. Then economic underdevelopment. Colonies were used mainly to send out raw material export, and they did not build strong industry, so poverty stayed even after independence. Then monoculture agriculture, that means they forced to cash cropping, treated as a weak single crop economies. So these were easily affected by changes in the world price. Then institutionalized racism. So colonial racism hierarchy were made into law. So apart held this, the South Africa was the most extreme example. Okay, so let us have some of the MCQs. Okay, let me check. Okay, the Burl here. Uh, the Berlin Conference 1884-85 was held mainly in end slavery in Africa, regulate European colonization and trade in Africa, give independence to African states and state African nationalism. So we already discussed this Berlin Conference 1885 is held to mainly, so the European power met to divide Africa, make rules for colonization. No African leader was invited there. Then Simon Bolívar was known as the liberator of what? Of whom? Mexico and Chile, Brazil and Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia and Ecuador, Peru and Bolivia. So the right answer is C. So the Simon Bolivar is led the freedom fight in North and South America. So people call him the liberator. Then the Dutch colonial system, that is Cultuurstelsel, was introduced in Indonesia, India, South Africa, Vietnam. The right answer is Indonesia. Then let us see the fourth one. The triangular trade mainly connected. We already discussed America, Asia, Europe, Australia, Europe, Africa and the America, North America, Russia and China, India, Africa and Europe. The right answer is B. The triangular trade mainly connected Europe, Africa and the America. Okay. Then the scramble for Africa refers to. Okay. So African countries joining together for trade, the quick colonization of Africa by European powers, the rise of African kingdoms, the 20th century, the end of the slave trade, Africa. So The scramble for Africa refers to B. The quick colonization of Africa. So this is the thing. This is a small presentation from my side. I hope you enjoyed the same. So we'll meet with the next slide. Okay, next lecture with the proper information. Okay, if you are newly watching my channel, please do subscribe and share with your friends. So signing off here, Mohan Rajan. Thank you. All the best for your coming examination.